we wrote a report about this a number of years ago. When I first started on, I was really surprised at the numbers. And when Gary showed you that graph where they were putting out 10,000 tons of biosolids on one property, that's about 200 tons of phosphorus. And the entire goal for Lake Okeechobee in a year of inflow is 105. So one single property owner putting 200 tons of phosphorus on their property. And there's no agricultural use that needs that much phosphorus. There's just nothing. So it's not being applied as agriculture amendment, it's just being dumped. And so that's really, and I'm glad you're pursuing this, because it's one of those dumb things we're doing that we don't need to do, and we can stop doing it and start making energy out of it, but we're just too lazy to do that. So thank you very much for that.
Anybody else? Toby?
Hey, Gary, can you tell me where they're using a omnipressor or the Omni plant today?
Actually, the Omni plant was created about 2 years ago. It was done by, you'd say this isn't rocket science. It was actually developed by rocket scientists working on the Orion spacecraft, and it was funded by the Gates Foundation. And what they were using the material for was to go into India. The Gates Foundation doesn't care about the U.S. They go to third world countries and try to help them out. And what they're trying to do is get rid of their the poop that are out there, where people are just digging it out of the hole with a bucket, you know. And so that's what they came up with the Omni processor.
But is it being used anywhere? in
Yes, if
Florida?
you wanted to see an Omni processor, actually, the closest one is in Washington State. But if you wanted to see one, you call them up, they'll take you out there and show you the facility working. But again, everybody's in their comfort zone right now, where, like I said, commissioners, they don't hear anything, it's just a buzz in the background. Utility directors, they love it, just put it in a truck and it's gone. Yeah, and ag guys are like, bring it on.
Just,
so how do we change that?
Did any of your study look at, and I agree entirely with the land application, I think it's, I'm glad that it's banned in the region here. That being said, did you look at, besides land application, actually tilling it into the ground, that type of stuff? Has the study's been done on that?
Right, but there's nothing out there right now that will till it deep enough to get it down to that 3.5 foot level or so that needs to get to where it actually attenuates.
Okay, we'll talk after about that.
Sure.
The last thing, I'm sorry, I apologize that you're not here, was, and just a comment on the DMPs. They're regulated by DACs for the most part, and right now, I think the largest problem there is you've got one inspector for about every 2 to 3 counties.
Right.
So as a result, if the fox, is letting the hen house go, you will. And so as a result, there's just rampant, they can say they're doing BMPs, but there's no inspection and no enforcement associated with it. So if anything, if we ramped up the FDAC's enforcement budget, I think it would also help with that as well.
But I don't really want to go into enforcement. Here's what I want to do.
Well,
is I
without
want to stop.
enforcement, what's the BMPs good for?
I'm going to tell you. You've got the stuff on the hill. It's sitting here right next to the wastewater treatment plant. Now, what are we going to do with it? We could create electricity. We could cart it off somewhere else, or we could just dump it on the land. And so I'm looking for the carrot here, not the stick. Ag people out there, what if all of a sudden, ag's got to get their reduction down by another 70–80% out there. What if you could say, okay, I'm going to give you a 50% reduction right now. You know how I'm going to do it? It's like having a nutrient opioid crisis out there. And we're looking around going, how do we get those opioids out of there? Well, we're the ones that are making the opioids. The utilities are processing the opioids, and we're sending the smack out onto the ag lands.
It's a powerful image.
Let's take 25% of the opioids.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm going to stop discussion, just so we're out of here on time. And if you have any questions, please talk to Gary. How do they reach you? Will you share your phone number if I give it out to people?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, I will. Let's have a warm round of applause. Give him your phone number, Gary.
It's 772-486-6043. 772-486-6043. And my email address is Roderick, 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 Gary, @gmail.com. And last thing I want to say is we've got representatives from Orca here. Water management districts have cut their water monitoring funding in half. See that slide up there with the nitrogen and phosphorus? You can immediately go, I understand that. I understand that this isn't septic tanks, it's fertilizer. You need the monitoring. And that's why we need to support those efforts like Orca and get those Kilroys out here going and looking at what's happening in the water.
Excellent. You got me years ago.
Can I go now?
You can go. Thank you, Gary. And next we have Deb Drum from Martin County. And look at that shirt she made all by herself. Isn't that awesome?
Hi, good afternoon, Deb Drum. And before I get into a Lake Okeechobee water conditions report, a couple of responses. Great presentation, Gary. Gary has met with all of our county commissioners, our utilities director, with our staff. I assure all the people in the room that we are not flat-footed on this biosolids issue. We've been encouraged by our board to really investigate what our options are on a policy, from a statewide policy standpoint, to see what we can do. And so we are doing that internally. I'm also very proud to say that on that water quality monitoring issue, our board did approve to fund, Orca had lost some state funding for 2 of their stations in Martin County, and our board of county commissioners stood up to go ahead and fund those this year. We've been working on the paperwork, and they're gonna have a check. The check is in the mail. That's actually literally true. Okay, so Mark isn't here today. In fact, I was webcasting that meeting this morning, and he and Mike Connor represented the group very well with some great questions. Just for some perspective, this year's wet season from the beginning of June to present has included 48.35 inches of rain, and that was of 2 days ago. Probably actually more. That's 46% of average rainfall. And just for the month of October so far, just where we are right now, there's been over about 4.5 inches of rain. And that's coincidentally also 146% of average. So just to give you some perspective on our rainfall, the lake's currently at 16.95 feet. About a year ago, it was about 1.29 feet lower than it is right now. And the lake does seem to have reached its peak for the wet season. We peaked out at about 17.2 feet, and it's now declining with releases. There's about 6,300 CFS entering the lake from Kissimmee Basin. That volume reduced significantly. It was up to 45,000 after Hurricane Irma. That was an unprecedented number. I've never seen numbers that high. And the total outflows from the lake are 9,600 CFS, so the lake continues to lower. And as we know, we're the recipient of a lot of that water, as well as Caloosahatchee. Typically, the Corps likes to have the lake levels fluctuate between 12.5 feet at the beginning of the wet season, which is around June 1st, to 15.5 feet at the beginning of the dry season, which is November 1st. The logic being, you end up higher, it gets you through the dry season, you have all of your consumptive uses met, and then when you're at the lower end of that range going into the wet season, so you have capacity as we deal with tropical systems. In my communications with the Corps this week, the following is subject to change. I will caveat my comment, but they have reported to me that the current release rates will continue until at least Friday, until next Friday. And then starting next Friday, they're looking to ramp down those releases. The ramp down of releases will probably continue until the Corps can get some kind of projection to have the lake level at 14 feet by around May 1st, 2018 to get ready for the wet season. So when you look at recession rates, of course, there's always the issue of how much is going to rain, what the current, how much rain we're going to get, what the evapotranspiration, if it gets warmer, if we have a warm wet season or dry season, then you could get more evapotranspiration and you might get a little more water off the lake. And we have to just factor all that into how this plays out. But at this point, it looks like we could be getting releases for a couple of 3 months easily. So right now, as far as water quality, extremely turbid water from Lake O is being released, as was witnessed in the great video that Jackie shared on our way in. And that can be seen throughout the estuary out into the ocean, as you also saw. And based on the Orca and Harbor Branch data that I accessed, real-time data on a regular basis. This morning, the turbidity in the South Fork was ranging between 109 and 144 NTUs. Just to give some perspective on that, if you get above the 25 range, that's pretty bad. So 109 to 144 is really pretty bad. It's very sediment, lots of sediment, lots of nutrients in that water. In the middle estuary, the turbidity was 61 NTU, and in the inlet, it was about 14. It was looking a little better in the inlet during high tides. With the water. Okay, well, not really a silver lining. The temperatures at the Roosevelt Bridge dropped in the last day from around 81 degrees a couple days ago down to 75 degrees, just with this little cold front that we've had move through. I think it's notable that we have not yet seen any blue-green algae. We have not seen the cyanobacteria blooms like we saw last year. There's so many different factors that it could be, but we think temperature is an important one. And so that may be helping us at this point in time, but really there's no way to zero in directly on what's happening in the estuary regarding some of those cyanobacterial blooms. Salinities are 0 throughout the estuary. They have been since the hurricane passed in early September. We had some exceptions of when we had increased salinities in the estuary. If you look at the data, you'll see some of this increase with the king tides, and we had a storm surge that lasted well beyond the hurricane passing because of just a nor'easter that we had. It was kind of pushing water in. So even on top of those king tides, the tides were a foot and a half higher than they normally would have been. And that prevented the Corps from releasing water as well. So not only were we getting a push of salt water up, they couldn't release any water out. So we did have some pretty good salinities there for a time, but unfortunately with the duration of this event, it doesn't look like it's gonna help our oysters at this point. And last month, when Diane was here for me presenting, we reported losses by the commercial fisheries due to freshwater releases from the lake. It was reported that inshore fishing collapsed, the kingfish season was forced to end early, and the upcoming Spanish mackerel season was impacted by freshwater. Don't think that Spanish mackerel season is happening, and we would expect a continued loss of the commercial fishing until the conditions improve. So I hate to end on such a dire note, so I gotta tell you about our All-American Ditch Stormwater Quality Retrofit Project. We renamed it because that's such a horrible name. So we're calling it St. Lucie Shores STA is how you'll hear us refer to it from this point forward. But we did reach an important milestone. We're gonna be at substantial completion by the end of this month. Even with all of the storms and everything that happened for the duration of the construction of this project, we came in completely on time and on budget. The contractor was Felix Associates of Florida. They did an amazing job. They're finalizing the landscape plantings, the sod, and the fencing. It's a $5.4 million project. It's gonna clean water from a 268-acre watershed that previously discharged untreated to the St. Lucie estuary. And the All-American Ditch watershed. Hello?
Sorry, I was recording it.
Whose phone is it?
I was recording the show.
This watershed was known to be one of the highest pollutant loading tributaries of the St. Lucie estuary. And this particular project consisted of installing more than a mile of storm pipe and control structures to capture and convey stormwater runoff. We've created almost 4-acre lake and a 5.6 acre stormwater treatment area. And all of those facilities will treat the water before it goes into the St. Lucie River. The project also provided improved flood protection for some of the neighborhoods in the St. Lucie shores that have historically experienced roadway and structural flooding. And I'd like to also report that this project, it was such a good project that there were multiple grant funding things that we got. And so we got funding from St. Lucie River Issues Team, from the EPA FDEP Section 319 grant program, from the FDEP TMDL Water Quality Restoration Grant Program, from state legislative appropriations, and all of those totaled $3 million. So we were able to bring this project to the citizens of Martin County at 50, they paid 55.5% of the cost. So it was greater than a 50-50 cost share. And lastly, just legislatively, the board did adopt their state legislative priorities for 2018. Those are available on our website. We have a new website too that was unveiled today. The content's the same, it just looks prettier. And the legislative priorities for the state were adopted at the board's October 10th meeting. And we are in committee meetings, full swing in Tallahassee right now. We have a new legislative coordinator. Her name is Chloe Seeberger. Hope to bring her to a meeting when she's not completely immersed in Tallahassee. And she is working hard, and I am working with her on our behalf on a lot of our water quality priorities and specific appropriation requests to bring more funding home to Martin County to get some of these projects implemented. And while Gary's here, I just have to say that the program that I inherited was a well-established program. He was really the person that led many of the outstanding stormwater projects to the tune of $64 million worth of the stormwater projects that the county counts as accomplishments for water quality improvement. So thank you for your legacy. Not legacy phosphorus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
State agencies, Andre?
Jackie,
Yes, Mr. President.
I'd just like to ask Deb a question. I sat at the meeting on Tuesday at the BOCC and heard them do their EAR, the evaluation of the comp plan, and then heard them pass changes to the comp plan that eliminate measurements of our waterways. Should I be upset about that, or will that continue? I'm upset about that because they took out every measurement that have been required up until this time and said cross out, and it went through the commission 3-2, and they submitted it to DEO.
So I'd like to look very specifically at the language that you're talking about, because I reviewed a lot of the environmental language
Yeah.
that went through. I can't say that I reviewed all of it, it's whatever they asked me to review,
Uh-huh.
but, sorry?
Chapter 2.
Yes, okay, so I wasn't as involved in chapter 2, but let me take a look at what you're talking about.
Please
But
do.
what I can tell you is that there is not, the board is pushing to do more water quality monitoring because of the water management district's reluctance or the changes that they've made in past years to reduce that amount of, we used to rely very much on that monitoring. And I am pushing to try to find ways. I mean, we were lucky to be able to fund Orca. I mean, that's data that we rely
Yeah,
on. There's some very
sure.
good real-time monitoring data going on. I would like to see us update our tributary monitoring. Gary had put up a map of the historic data that the district used to do up in the tributaries, and we'd like to elaborate or continue that kind of work. So I'll work with you on.
I'd like to have a meeting with somebody
That's
about
great,
that.
and let's just remember, and I appreciate the comment, and absolutely, Deb has to answer, but all things start and end with the commission.
I know
All
that,
things start and end with the commission.
and that's why I'm
Staff is
concerned
staff.
about the vote that happened.
Chapter 2 to look at?
Come on up. All right, we've got 10 minutes, and I'm gonna finish on time. Let's go.
Okay, Paul Gray, just a report on the lake, as Deb said, it's almost 17 feet. They've got to lower it down for dike safety and for getting ready for next year. The water is extraordinarily turbid because of all the stirring from the hurricane and the mud, and you guys are getting that water. It's probably going to kill virtually all the submerged aquatic vegetation in the lake. Just like your seagrasses get killed, this is what happens in the lake. Once that happens, the bass fishery usually crashes, and the crappie fishery probably will crash. Once that happens, we can't regrow those plants until we get a big drought, and the water gets so low that the lake can reach the bottom again, and that may be, however many years. So it's like you guys, once these things happen, it's years to recovery. And this gets back to, we gotta build these projects. We gotta build storage north of the lake. We gotta build the EAA reservoir. There's a lot of negative publicity or counter stories going around about the EAA reservoir wouldn't have helped us this year. Nothing would have fixed Irma, but it wouldn't be as bad. And it would give us another way to send water south. Right now, part of the problem with sending water south is there's some construction projects that aren't finished, and we can't send as much water in certain areas as we need to. So a lot of the negative publicity is neglecting some of the problems we have down south that we're working on and we're trying to fix. And it just gets back, we've got to do these projects or this is going to be our life. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Paul Gray is a real hero. He's our modern day warden, absolutely. Nice to have you here. This is one of the most important people. Mr. Grande, you are. Mr. Grande, Charles Grande. I always want to call you Commissioner Grande. He was a big commissioner when I was nothing. And, no, it's true. And he is going to give us, I'm going to give him the mic, and he has some things he wants to bring up for the Rivers Coalition Defense Fund, which is really the most important part of the Rivers Coalition.
I do want to change the subject for just a moment. If you notice when Gary was speaking, there were two things that jumped right out at me. One was passion and the other was frustration. So I just want to follow up on his presentation with the last couple meetings of the Rivers Coalition, we reported on a project that sits on the C-25 canal, the Sunbreak Farms project, which is 7,000 acres. A farming outfit that is planning to import, not their own sludge, but to import sludge and spread it on 7,000 acres that runs off directly into the C-25 canal, which runs directly into the Indian River Lagoon. It's incredible that with the information that Gary passed along today, people are actually doing this, and they're planning to do more. And it's really hard to fight it, because as Gary mentioned, they hide behind what Florida has as the Right to Farm Act. If you can define in your own words anything you're doing as a standard farming practice, it's very, very hard to fight it. So we really need to get together and change that concept so that right to farming, which is a good idea for food production, is limited to things that are not harmful, but things that are helpful. The other thing I wanted to do during my period, as you know, the commission to propose amendments to the Florida Constitution is winding towards its completion, putting together their program. Fortunately, one of our members here is on that commission and has recently announced 2 initiatives that she's personally backing, and there's one more that affected her greatly, which is the closing of the primaries. I'd like to have Jackie, who hasn't said a word all meeting, speak to you directly about those.
Thank you. Now I have to follow my own rules and say this in just a few seconds. I'll just say that I was very honored. Senator Joe Negron put me on the CRC, which is the Constitutional Revision Commission. It only happens every 20 years. It's one of 5 ways that our state constitution can be changed. And the way we need to look at this is that things are happening all the time, and sometimes they are successful and sometimes they fail. But when they fail, they often pick up somewhere else. So, for instance, this Constitution Review Commission, there will be things that come up, and sometimes some will make it and some won't. But some that don't make it, for instance, could become citizen initiatives. You know, citizen initiatives when people sign like 800,000 signatures and are able to get something on the state constitution. So you have to try to be excited about everything all the time. And Sherry Plymel from Martin County, who's also on the commission, she proposed closing the write-in loophole. You may remember that coming up in 2016. And I have put 2 forth, and there are many others that have been put forth. And one of mine is to make the Department of Environmental Protection a cabinet position. And Gary would go, oh my gosh, you're gonna put those guys as a cabinet position, but what I think you would do is raise the level of the DEP so that they were part of the cabinet and were not so exposed to all of the political issues that happen. And what we would have to do is make sure that we worked hard to get the right person voted into office 4 years from now to be in that position. Florida has a plural cabinet, which means, or a plural governorship, which means that the governor does not make all decisions by himself or herself. And that goes back to very difficult things that happened in the state of Florida in the 60s that mostly had to do with desegregation and the Supreme Court of the United States nullifying the Florida legislature 3 times between 1962 and 1967. So the other idea is a public proposal, and this proposal is about making it a right for a clean and healthful environment. And this is something, it's not new, it's in 6 states, it's been around since 1972. They tried to get it there in 1972 here, but it didn't happen. And again, it elevates the environment in the state constitution. And I thank Charles for asking me to speak about it. And anybody who wants to know can go to my blog, JackieGirlWithFish.com. And we have Mark Perry. Mark, come on up. Mark!
So what, now we have 2 minutes. I heard that as I came in, and the Riverkeeper report. So I'm gonna only take one of those 2 minutes, but real quick. As you know, the water quality here locally is terrible. And it's been dumped on since after the storm event, but even before that, in mid-June, prior to mid-June, we were getting great water quality. If you were out in April, May, we were having beautiful water conditions. And then along came June, we had some heavy rains. They came out of all the local canals, all the discharges. Water quality dropped, and it started to recover a little bit right in there in September. And guess what happened? Irma came and dumped tons of rain everywhere, but also in Lake Okeechobee, and we're still getting those discharge damages. And the Corps of Engineers doesn't see those stopping anytime soon, because the lake went up to over 17 feet, and now it's just dropping down slightly. But they're dumping, billions of gallons a day to us, and twice as much as the Caloosahatchee, and they don't put any south, and that's the big problem. So I was down at the EA Reservoir Project scoping meeting. There was one in Clewiston on Monday and one out here in Palm Beach today. A lot of people showed up, even Department of Interior, the Corps, all the agency people, all the folks were there. And they're gonna start a real earnest meeting on October 31st, I believe that's next Tuesday, with the actual laying out of all the features for that project. But we all emphasize that that project was the original comprehensive Everglades plan, was part of the plan to move water south and to store it, treat it, and move it south. So we're dogmatic about getting the right components in that, maximizing it to 360,000 acre feet, which was the original plan, and then we're gonna get some movement south. And the modeling that the district did, and I held up in 2002, they did a regional model for the EA storage project in 2002, what's that, 15 years ago? And that showed that if all the components north of the lake and south, including the EA reservoir, were built, it would reduce our Lake Okeechobee regulatory discharges to the St. Lucie by 91%, from 22 down to 2% of those, and on the Caloosahatchee from 56% down to 5%. That's a 96% reduction. So we can significantly do this. It's going to take all the projects. We don't oppose north of the lake. One of the components you've heard about, deep injection wells, which are being advocated north of the lake, are totally bogus. They're totally going to put water as disposal down in the boulder zone, hope it goes out and actually comes out to the ocean and doesn't do good on our reefs there. But that's another story. We need to be opposed to those deep injection wells. The next meeting on the 29th, hopefully Hal Wanless, the geologist at University of Miami will be here. I'll put a plug in for that. That's November 29th in the PM. That's a Wednesday PM here. And he'll be talking to us about sea level rise, and also he's an expert at the deep ecology of our state, so come and listen to that. But water quality needs to be, we need to keep fighting, obviously right now, but all the time. And as Paul said when he got up, nothing could have stopped all the damage from Irma that's happening everywhere, including our waterways. But it's how we handle it, and it causes the problem of the long duration and the long time that this is going on. Over 40 days now, and as you know, heard me say, oysters can only tolerate about 28 days fresh water. So we went out last Wednesday here at Flagler. There was 99 to 100% mortality in oysters. So we have this brood stock. We're replanting. We're not giving up. We have seed stock for seagrass beds too, so we're not giving up on that. But we've got to stop these damaging discharges, not only from the lake, but the C23, C24, 10 Mile Creek, and C44 basins contribute over 46% to our
the tidal basin is only about 13% of our inflow. So when they say it's all your local runoff, you tell them it's the district that causes that goes out of those canal structures. They control those canal structures, and of course the Corps controls the lake. So that's all. Can I do it in a minute?
This next Tuesday meeting is a public discussion, public comment.
Public comment, public workshop, it'll be open from 9 to 5 all day down there at the district. So if you are available, I know it's a daytime thing, but we've got to get that scope right, get that project going in the right direction.
Great, thank you, Mark.
I've had some health issues that have been ongoing for quite some time. I've had a couple of surgeries, one of them reasonably significant. Everything came out good, which is really good from our point of view. About 2 weeks ago, I started getting back on my feet. I went up to the Atlantic Menhaden meeting up in Melbourne. Indian River Keeper had four members of the board there, Captain Connor, Terry Gibson, and Dylan Hansen were there. Week after that, Sebastian Action had a meeting, was there speaking along with Captain Connor. Let's see, went to the C4CW meeting on the beach in Jupiter where we spelled out the word help to a drone. Let's see, Monday I speak in Jupiter at 7 o'clock at the firehouse in the Burt Reynolds Park. It's the dive people down there. They have a lot of interest in the lagoon and such. We met at the Menhaden thing. We also are working on a fundraiser this month. I don't know where Kenny went, but we haven't decided on a date yet, but we'll let you know. It's really nice to be back and see everybody. Thank you.
Are there any member comments or announcements?
Marty shaved,
Yes.
cut off his beard.
Okay, great.
I think everybody was aware we screened Florida Geographic Society and Sir Briar Foundation screened this film Plastic Ocean back in October, and it was good. It was completed finally.
Plastic Ocean screening at the Lyric Theater back in October. It was completely full, and there were people that wanted tickets and couldn't get them. We're doing it again. It's going to be 7 p.m. Friday, November the 17th here at the Lyric. There's 400 tickets over there. All you got to do is go to the box office and pick them up. I got flyers. If anybody wants to take them and hand flyers out, we'd appreciate you spreading them around town.
Okay, Daryl, Laney is here.
Yeah, just real quick.
This is Lady who is running the Seafood Festival.
Yeah, so the Seafood Festival is back again this year. Unfortunately, we had to take a year off because of some unforeseen health issues with myself, but this will be the 4th year that the Rivers Coalition is part of it. They're going to have a booth out there. They're going to be speaking on the stage to inform the community. It's November 18th and 19th at Memorial Park. It's a family fun event, 2 days. I have posters out there, so come out, support the event. They'll be all out there, volunteers, selling, raising money, and just informing the community on what's going on. So we hope to see you guys on November 18th and 19th, and there's some posters out there.